Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. Today is another episode of Sip and Slips. This is going to be the 8th episode. I'm your host, Daniel Jonas, like always. And it is Tuesday, March 28th, 2018. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina, on a sunny day. Still kind of cold. Pardon the hair and the workout gear. Gearing up to go training a little bit. So, gonna go do some jujitsu down at Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy this morning. Remember, guys, to like, subscribe, review the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and to go to the YouTube channel. Click the like button on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel. All that is going to help create better and more content for everybody. So I really appreciate all the views and all the listens already. But the more we can get this out to people, the better I can make it. All right, so today on this episode, we're just going to go over what's been going on in the news, a couple fight announcements, and then I'll talk about a little bit about the Rose Joanna fight that's coming up, not this weekend, but next. This Sunday, I'll do a full breakdown, of that fight, just like I did with the Tony Khabib. I hope you guys listened to that. Put work into it. I put a lot of work into it in the sense of I did my research, did my studying. But there could always be more work done. But I'm in the very beginning stages of getting this podcast off the ground, so limited in what I can do. But for what I put into it, I'm really proud of my assessment and analysis of the fight. So going into the future fights that are coming up after this one. So for right now, the UFC is going through a little bit of a hiatus of fights because we have this big one coming up in April. But as soon as the Khabib-Tony fight is done, then the floodgates open up again for weekend after weekend after weekend of fights. And recently, there have been a couple announcements that I'll get into right now. So fight announcements this week already in the news. We got Kumar Usman versus Santiago Ponzinibbio in Chile. That will be the main event. Getting the welterweight train rolling again. Darren Till versus Wonderboy for the main event in Liverpool, England. It doesn't say it on the UFC website, but it's talked about and already scheduled. It's scheduled now. It was rumored last time I talked about it, but now it's for sure scheduled. Main event in Liverpool. Then you had Colby Covington versus RDA for interim championship for welterweight, for the interim welterweight championship in Brazil. That's at UFC 225 in Rio. And Nelson, Gunnar Nelson, so Conor McGregor's boy, Iceland's finest, versus Neil Magny, another welterweight scrap that'll be going down in Chile. For those that don't know, Chile being, the country, it's one of the first events that they're doing down there. Pretty cool. Pretty sure it's like the first event that they're doing down there. And then Bisping talking about Liverpool, England, talking about his retirement fight. I don't know who they should pair him up against because it's his retirement fight. If you want to get him out of there, you should stick him to like a young up-and-comer. But then again, you already did that with Kevin Gastelum, and he's adamant this is his last fight. This is where he's from. So a respectful bout is what he's looking for. He's not looking to talk shit and be, that kind of Michael Bisping. So I don't really know who to pair him up with. He's got animosity with a lot of the guys, such as Luke Rockhold, Vitor, that I'd want to see him fight. However, I guess you could pair him up with like a Rashad Evans or something. But that fight, the first time they did that was not a great fight. Lyoto Machida, I guess. Derek Brunson's been calling for the fight. Don't think Michael Bisping's looking for that. He's looking for a win to go out on top in his hometown and, go home at night sleep easy. So, in the news this week, not really much craziness, right? Just a little bit more, more ramping up for UFC 223 coming up, the Khabib fight and the Tony fight, the Joanna and Rose fight. Just really trying to gear that up, getting everyone ready. Um, I guess the first thing in the headlines that's a crossover. Anthony Joshua and Dana White are in the news because Dana White's talking about offering. Well, not really Dana White, more Zuffa Boxing. So Zuffa, the promotion company, the media company that owns the UFC. Zuffa was created by Lorenzo and Fred Fertitta. They're the it's like the so Zuffa is like Paramount Network. Paramount Network. Zuffa's the reigning Papa Bear, and then UFC is just it's underneath it. So from UFC, they're trying to get into boxing now. So that's like a branch that they're they're spreading out from, and that branch, with that, they're going to try to. According to Anthony Joshua, they offered him a $500 million contract. Pause. Great contract. Wow. Could you imagine getting $500 million right off the bat? He's definitely not going to get a check for $500 million right off the bat. It would be a contract. He would have to obviously fight a certain amount of times. They didn't really get into the details. All they said was a number. Something to get people excited about. But think about it this way. Anthony Joshua, biggest star, or one of the biggest stars in boxing right now, clears 20 mil a fight anyways. So it's not like 20, 30, and plus sponsorships and all that. With Zuffa Boxing, does he keep the sponsorships? Does he have to go to Reebok now? Is Reebok going to be involved in Zuffa Boxing? Or is it a $500 million contract all at once, has to fight a certain amount of time? But once they have him, what do they do with him? They're going to pair him up against other MMA fighters? Well, then he's just going to wax the floor with all of them in boxing. Well, then they have to start developing a roster in boxing, and your first purchase is going to be Anthony Joshua? Seems like you're spending a lot right out the gate to hope that people are going to come over. Why would people want to come over to Zuffa Boxing if all you have is Anthony Joshua? Granted, he's a well-developed fighter, or well-developed by name fighter, you know, champ, Olympic gold medalist, yada yada yada. But just because you have one boxer doesn't mean like every boxer's just gonna jump ship. A lot of guys already have good contracts. A lot of guys already living out, their boxing dreams. Why are they gonna jump ship to Zuffa, especially when the UFC is already dealing with who are they gonna have for their next TV deal? And everyone's already dropped out. Maybe they renew with Fox. Probably not. For right now, it just seems like they're only going to be on like Amazon, YouTube. And these boxers, they make a lot of money from Showtime, HBO, Fox Sports with PCB. A lot of these guys, they rely on that Showtime money or that HBO money. And that's good money. Or that ESPN money even. And if they can't even have that, right? Because ESPN, maybe not ESPN, but Showtime, they'll also do YouTube as well. But on top of that, they get the affluent fan who's got a little bit more money to spend on Showtime or HBO subscription. So there's reasons why to join Zuffa if you're getting offered that much money, but in the long term, what does it do for your career? And Anthony Joshua's not in the business of boxing just to make money. He's there to make a legacy. So to just offer him money is kind of fucked up in the sense of he's more than just a cash cow. That's not the point, right? He's Anthony fucking Joshua. He's not a guy that you can just bait over with money. And you can dangle in front of him, oh, step in the octagon too. Like, you'll get a chance to fight the real fighter. And test yourself. Oh, cool, so you get to watch Anthony Joshua go in there and possibly fight Stipe. So what, he fights Stipe? Stipe doesn't go in there with the same game plan he had against Francis Ngannou? or any of those guys go in there with the same game plan. I think UFC is just trying to stay relevant in boxing with the whole crossover with Floyd and Connor. They're just trying to keep that going, trying to keep on using that as media attention. But I don't think he goes for it. I don't think it happens. To just yeah, I don't think he signs a contract with UFC. I think he's doing just fine with his manager and with what they're doing over at Showtime. Even though this weekend is actually an Anthony Joshua fight weekend, so Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker this weekend on Showtime. I'll do a post-fight breakdown of it after the fight happens. Um, I'll just get into it a little bit, but this is a big fight. If Anthony Joshua wins, then it's red painting night for everybody, because that means Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua um, at Wembley Stadium for the biggest heavyweight fight of all time. Uh, but Joseph Parker's no slouch, New Zealand guy. Reminds me a little bit, for those MMA fans, um, that Robert Whittaker vibe. Right? He's not very big for the weight class he fights in, but he's very fast. He knows how to use the speed. He knows how to use the inside box. He knows where he succeeds against these heavier guys, and he's no slouch. He's no slouch. And I think Joseph Parker sees something in Anthony Joshua's game, and they've mentioned it a couple times, calling him chinny. Um, I mean, obviously, when you're fighting heavyweights, it's easy to get clipped. I mean, everyone throws with heat, and these guys are huge. But if anyone looked at Deontay Wilder and said, "Oh, he was chinny after getting rocked by Luis Ortiz," I I I bet you money you won't step in the ring with Luis Ortiz and let him hit you clean. And two, if he did hit you clean, would you be able to stay on your feet uh, like Deontay did? No, these guys are just big, and they hit fucking hard. So yeah, if you got hit clean by me, I'm not gonna rock a huge dude or rock someone bigger than me. Um, Same with any smaller guy, right? Demetrius Johnson hit you clean, it's gonna fucking hurt. But if you're 170 pounds, you're probably not gonna get rocked. But when everyone's a giant, you know, someone's bound to get rocked. Um, but it's about how you recover at that stage. And Anthony Joshua's recovered. He's perfect in his record. So, doing something right. But if a professional on the other side of the table is saying that he's chinny, maybe going to listen to it because they might see something. He even knows that those guys hit hard. So, if he sees something, then we'll see this weekend. If Joseph Parker sees something, see if he exploits it. But even then, Joseph Parker versus Deontay Wilder, that would be the next fight. It's crazy. So let's get into some of the headlines. I know I already talked a little bit about the Anthony Joshua boxing crossover and did a little bit of a boxing headline, but we'll get into some MMA stuff strictly. So the first headline I'm going to go over is the Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson fight. So Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson 2. The reason why this is news and not necessarily just a fight announcement, I've already covered it as a fight announcement, but the reason why this is news is the fact that Frankie's gone through with the recent knockout and he's coming back pretty quickly after it. And the question is, fighters bouncing back, coming back too early. Frankie's elaborated on sparring. He's sparring, and he even tweeted out, I talked about in an interview I was sparring, but let's be clear, doing a lot of light sparring, not getting hit in the head, a lot of touch sparring, yada, yada, yada. But if you're doing that, that means you're coming back too soon, right? Excuse me. If you're worried about getting hit in the head right now, what's the difference between right now and then a couple weeks from now with 4-ounce gloves and then no shin pads and then elbows are legal against the guy that hits pretty hard for that division and a guy that throws mostly power shots? I don't think it's right that he's coming back right now, especially against Cub Swanson. Like, if you went against a guy that was willing to be a wrestler against you and maybe doesn't hit as hard. Not saying that Frankie can't beat Cub, but the last time that he beat Cub, he submitted him. So, unless Frankie goes in with that game plan of just taking him down, mothering him and then just submitting him. He still has to strike with Cub, and if you ask Dudu Choi, it's hard. If you ask a lot of these guys, it's hard. So I just hope that I hope it's not a Michael Bisping effect where he goes in there and then he gets knocked out or Nick gets knocked out by a guy that definitely didn't knock him out the first time. But the only reason why he knocked him out this time is because of Frankie Edgar's lack of patience and waiting to get back in there to right that wrong. Right? Sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes getting. But Frankie's an older fighter, so he should be a little bit more knowledgeable on this. But that's just who he is. So if he wants to go in there and to right his wrong, personally, I'm not going to ever take anything away from Frank. If he loses this fight, I could care less. He's still a warrior. He's still a champ. He's just trying to get back to that title contention where he was. He was the #1 title contender, and he's just trying to get back there. What's funny about this fight is these two have both lost to the #1 title contender. So whoever wins this essentially could either get a rematch with Brian Ortega or fight Max Holloway. In Cub's sense, he'd be getting a rematch with Max Holloway, and Cub said this week that Brian Ortega doesn't stand a chance against Max. That's kind of a heavy statement, but I think he's just lining it up just in case Ortega loses and he beats Frankie. He would be considerably next in line for that title fight. So is it too early? Personally, I think it is. I think it's that Michael Bisping, right? Michael Bisping didn't get knocked out by George St. Pierre, but he got floored by George St. Pierre. Got hit by that left hook, sat him down, plus took a lot of damage, and then got choked out. So, and then he goes in against Kevin Gastelum and gets shut out, like lights off, right? Well, Frankie got, knocked down real bad, and then finished up with some punches, and it wasn't a pretty knockout. It was a pretty knockout on Ortega's side, but not for Frankie. It wasn't like, I don't think it was worth it. So that being said, I don't think it's the right time for Frankie to come back, but who are you to question Frankie Edgar? I mean, this guy survived way more, and I don't know. To me, I think it is too early to come back, but I can't doubt Frankie. Right? But yeah, as any other fighter, yeah, I think it's worth waiting. You need to let your brain heal, like a lot. A lot. I mean, the CTE is already there, but still got to let that brain heal, especially with the sparring. I know he talked about, I'm not getting hit in the head during sparring. Still, you're about to go fight someone, and they're going to hit you in the head with 4-ounce gloves. So, yeah, maybe not right now, but you'll eventually get hit in the head. So, the next headline would be what's going on with the bantamweight division. I complained about the welterweight division, and look where we are now. Welterweight's all opening up. Everyone's got fights. Now the floodgates are now open, and people are starting to roll. Praise. Now, bantamweight division. TJ versus DJ is not happening. According to Dana White, it is off. So, what does that mean for the time being? Since DJ is hurt, according to Dana and DJ, he's still hurt from the shoulder surgery. He was supposed to be better by now, but shoulders are a tricky thing. Taking a little bit longer to heal. But, alright. Well, with that being said, what do we do with TJ? Cody Garbrandt's asking for a rematch. TJ's not going to take that fight, and I agree with him. TJ shouldn't take that fight. TJ worked his way back up to championship status after losing a close split decision to Dominic Cruz. He had to then go fight and beat John Lineker, Rafael Sunsao, and make his name again. And he was happy. He was willing to do that. He proved why he's the champ. Now he's there, and he's starting to try to take over that bantamweight king position. Dominic Cruz is still in the mix, so he wears this. Dominic Cruz kind of still has his crown, right? He was a champ for so long that people put respect on the name Dominic Cruz. People still look at T.J. Dillashaw as a younger cat. He's kind of young, but he's at least older than Cody Garbrandt. But they still don't look at him in the as the bantamweight king. TJ arguably is a little bit more of a bantamweight king at this point than Dominic is, because if you look at the people that TJ's beaten, he's beaten the most relevant guys up to date, and you know they and now he's waiting for a guy in the top five that he hasn't fought. Right? If Dominic Cruz was to be champ right now, Dominic Cruz fought TJ once, he fought Cody once. Those are the top three. They've all relatively fought each other, but um, he hasn't fought Rafael Sunsao, hasn't fought a John Lineker, hasn't fought Jimmy Rivera. Granted, neither has TJ, but he's at least fought two of those. He hasn't fought. Well, Cody hasn't even fought. Let's say Cody hasn't even fought Jimmy Rivera, John Lineker, um, Rafael Sunsao. The big one for me is they haven't fought Rafael Sunsao. I know he's not a draw, but technically, he's number 3 or number 4. So you can't just like leave him out. And then you have Marlon Moraes coming up the ranks. He's knocking fools out, bringing a name up. And then you got that Jimmy Rivera cat. You know, he's undefeated right now. Uh, he's very good. Tiger Schultzman, martial artist. Those guys have been racking in the wins recently, kind of under the radar. But these Tiger Schultzman guys, these guys are good. Very, very good. Very technical and very good. So what does that mean? Well, we got to mix up the bantamweight division, just like we did with the welterweight division. Take fights, guys. It doesn't matter. You just got to take fights. You got to figure it out. If you guys fight who you guys, you know, if you all think you can beat each other, then figure it out, and then it'll make sense. TJ will get his opponent. Someone will fight him, and then eventually, if you fight, it doesn't really matter who the champ is. If you start fighting, you'll eventually get to that championship fight. Right? Trust in what you are good at, and then make everyone else follow. Right? If I'm a really good striker, well then I just keep racking up these knockout wins, and it doesn't matter who the champ is. He's gonna suffer the same loss as everyone else. If I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, just sinking up those submissions, everyone's gonna fall to him just like the last guy. If I like to make it long fights and go to decisions, I don't know a lot of fighters that like to do that, but if a person likes to just rack up decision wins, hey, line them up, put them down. So, with that being said, these guys, if they think they're better than each other, Dominic Cruz, fight Jimmy Rivera, or fight a Rafael Sunsao. Cody Garbrandt, fight a Jimmy Rivera, fight a Rafael Sunsao, fight Dominic Cruz for the second time. TJ's also he was working to get down to 125, and now you want to fight him at 135? He's got to work to get back there again. I feel bad for TJ. He's draining himself, putting weight back on, draining himself, putting weight back on. You know, these guys think that he's not doing anything, he's just waiting. No, he was trying to get ready for a super fight at 125. And now you're telling him he's got to go back up to 135. Oh, fuck. Right? It's hard. And he was planning on doing that as a champion. And you haven't heard any complaining from his side about that. That says a lot about TJ. Um, believe me, guys, used to be a huge Cruz fan. To the point where I was like, fuck TJ, fuck the rest of the division. But, you know, um, I've realized and I've learned and I've kept an open mind. TJ is one of the best, if not the best, UFC fighters to date. With his style, um, with his abilities, and the fact that he's trying to make this super fight happen. That he continues to fight regardless of wins, losses, and he gets better. And he's just, all around incredible athlete and doesn't really have any holes in his game. Right? It makes an interesting fight against the best in the world, pound for pound, if you're on equal level, if not, slightly less, but maybe a little bit bigger, or slightly more, but a little bit smaller, against the best in the world, right? If DJ was going to fight John Lineker, for example, not saying that John Lineker's knockout power is worth you know, being excited about like against anyone in a fight, but we kind of know how that fight would go. All right, TJ would take him or DJ would take him down. And it's not as compelling, but if you take TJ Dillashaw and you look at all he's done in his fighting style and you compare it to DJ, it's like, oh shit, these guys are so close. Is it about size? Is it about what? And it makes it a lot more compelling of fight. So that's how you have to classify how good TJ is. Is that he versus the champ is such a 125 obviously because he's the champ at 135. Not only is he the, I mean that's another reason why he's compelling. He's a two-time champ. But then you got to realize that him versus any other champ is as equally as of a compelling matchup. That's what makes him so great. So mix it up, mix the division up, mix the bantamweight division up. We need to see it. We need to see it happen. The bantamweight division is a little bit of a mix-up. Featherweight's moving along smoothly. Lightweight's moving along smoothly. Welterweight's now moving along smoothly. Light heavyweight. Well, that's another fight announcement. Volkan Ozdemir versus Shogun Rua. Probably a contender spot, because believe it or not, folks, the highest or the longest win streak in the light heavyweight division, not named John Jones, is Shogun Rua. Yeah. And there's a chance if he beats Volkan Ozdemir that we see Shogun fight for the title again. Craziness. So, fight. Yeah, that's a big fight announcement. Volkan versus Shogun on the Chili card. Good stuff. So, and then heavyweight division, they've got their thing going on right now, but it's moving along smoothly. Andre Arlovsky versus Tai Tuivasa, Mark Hunt's boy. I hate that they're doing this to Andre Arlovsky. They are making him a gatekeeper. They're just like, here you go. Like, here's all the young studs. Here's all the up and coming guys. Here you go. Here's Stipe. Here's Francis. Here's Ty. I feel bad for those guys. Overeem's kind of the same way. Next one, sticking in the heavyweight division, USADA and Josh Barnett. They resolved things. Josh Barnett was suspended, come to find out, was tainted supplement after a year and a half of suspension, a long time away from the sport. Tainted supplement. Josh Barnett used a lot of his money to hire lawyers and prove that he wasn't wrong. A year and a half, man. So, on the most recent Below the Belt podcast with Brendan Schaub, he got into a huge rant about it, and I'll just promote his podcast for this section. If you want to hear a guy that's fought on that level really get passionate about it in a way that if I got passionate about it, it would seem almost disingenuous because I haven't been a pro on that level. But I feel for the guys, and I'm super empathetic for the people and the fighters that have put their hard time and years of dedication to have one company that you essentially work for or contracted for, a third party that's not even associated with that company, come in and tell you that you can't work because you got busted for something that could have been resolved within a couple weeks. But yet it took a year and a half for a guy that he had other outlets, I'm sure, that he was working to, financially keep himself afloat, but at the same time, he makes his money by fighting, right? His job is to step in the octagon. A former heavyweight champion of the world gets pushed aside for a year and a half to fight these legal battles that don't cost, that aren't cheap, right? Legal battles are super expensive, especially if you're fighting against a multi-billion-dollar company. You're not fighting against your best friend next door that you and maybe your friend that's a lawyer you can chill out a couple bucks to him. No, you're hiring a team of lawyers to combat a literal force of lawyers on the other side that have infinite amount of wealth that they can just throw at. And that's your employer. You're fighting against your employer. These guys that are supposed to be looking out for you, and these people that quote unquote care about the fighter. No, you don't. you cared about the fighter, you wouldn't be having legal battles with them. Right? You wouldn't be having this third party. And I mean, not even Josh Barnett's the problem here. It's Cynthia Calvillo as well for the marijuana that she got like she got suspended for 6 months by the state athletic or state athletic commission. Perfect. All right, that's her punishment. 6 months. Deal with it. And then USADA comes out and is like, no, we're gonna give you an extra 9 months. Fucking why? Why? And then she loses sponsorships. She loses her financial backing just because they want to suspend her anytime there's a suspension for a failed drug test. And that's all that's going to read on the headlines: failed drug test, failed USADA test. And then when Josh Barnett wins, or when Josh Barnett passes the test, there's no headline that comes up. Oh no, USADA was wrong. There's no headline that says nope, USADA fucked up again. Could you imagine how many headlines it would be? Yet again, USADA fucks up. You can rephrase that phrase so many different times, and I guarantee you, it'll be the sequel. They'll have like a trilogy. It'll be more than a trilogy, right? You're having a series, fucking 24 episodes of USADA fucking up, right? Tainted supplements. Not even really USADA fucking up, but more just like the tainted supplements, or not the fighter's fault. So, with that being said, I think it's just a gross oversight on these fighters. These fighters should be looked at as family rather than not necessarily family, but definitely look better looked at employees than they are right now. To me, this is almost gladiatorial, or your indentured servant. Like you're fighting and you're getting a check, and then we've got this huge, performance institute that you can use. You can use the insurance policy for the doctors, yada yada yada. But a study just came out, and not even really a study, more just uh, like this thing came out saying that LeBron James spends $1.5 million on his body a year. Chefs, nutritionists, personal training, um, all the medical stuff. He's 30 something years old. He's in the prime of his career, so he's probably like, he's got a lot of stuff. Name one fighter that can spend $1.5 million on their body a year. None of them could, because they couldn't pay them enough. But just to compare, LeBron James is playing basketball. I'm not saying that sport's not hard. It's not super competitive. It's not taxing the body. I'm not saying it doesn't require a lot of athleticism. It doesn't require a lot of skill. That's not what I'm saying. It is a very, very good and or no, I don't want to say that. It's a professional sport for a reason. It's a professional. I just have like it's a professional sport. Yeah, it's pretty much all that. But it's not fighting, right? That's what I'm trying to get to. It's not fighting. As much as it's a professional, intense sport at the highest level, and not a lot of guys get there, it's still just basketball. It's still just a game. Yet these guys that fight, that punch each other and kick each other in the face, and then try to break each other's legs, arms, choke each other out, they get paid shit. And then they're forced to fight again to get that money again. And they don't even spend nearly 1.5 mil to make sure that body is completely, protected, and making sure that you're doing the best for it. They fight with their bodies. They don't fight with their minds. We're not virtual reality fighting each other. They're fighting with their bodies, but yet the company that employs them can't, shell out enough money to make sure that they're all healthy. Yeah, they're on their insurance policy, but a lot of them have to wait till after a fight so that way they can use that insurance policy. They don't have enough money during the off season to take care of a blown ACL, so a lot of these guys go in there with nagging injuries from fight camp, and they have to fight at, according to Kamaru Usman, at 30% or whatever. But if you pay these fighters enough, then they wouldn't be coming in at 30%. They'd be coming in 100% because they're making sure that they're doing everything that they possibly can. and they definitely would not be tested or getting caught at least in drug tests, but they would be paying the right people to make sure that they're not taking tainted or they're not taking these dumb supplements, right? Or making sure that they're not failing drug tests. The point is not to catch fighters, like, or it's the point is to catch dirty fighters. That's the point of USADA, but it's not the point to catch these guys that are getting busted for weed, right? It's the point is to catch fighters that are being dirty, that are trying to really sneak around and use the dark shit. But if you get metabolites for some weed, as a USADA guy, you should just be like, all right, whatever, weed, out of here, right? So, I mean, that's enough on that. Uh, Like I said, check out the Below the Belt podcast. Brendan Schaub, he he gets super intense about it. I can get a little intense. I can understand. I can empathize. It's frustrating. Super frustrating. All right, so before we get into the welterweight division, because I just want to end on like interim belts, because I've talked a lot about interim belts here, but you guys have never really heard my take on what I think about interim belts. But before we get into that, Ronda Rousey, ESPN, doing interviews. I'm just going to cover this because people love to listen about it. Ronda Rousey did a couple interviews with ESPN um, on WWE about life. I guess she's trying to develop a persona. It's hard for me to watch things with her because she's super cringy. Like her shit's super cringy because that that question that people don't fucking ask about, like, hey, you never talk to the media about after you lost 2 times. Like you never talk about MMA. Why is that? Um, no one asks that question. It's always about how do you feel about WWE. So it's always like negating the elephant in the room, and everyone sees the elephant in the room. And like this elephant is doing fucking the jig. He's sitting there tapping his feet. He's blowing his horn. He's eating peanuts loud as shit. Like this elephant is not quiet, and everyone's just ignoring it. There's some elephants in the room that you can ignore and you can just like whatever. Like, we won't talk about it. But this one, and one of the interviewers, if I knew his name, oh god, asked her, and he did it terribly. He asked her terribly, kind of set himself up, but she trolled him, and it's like, quit being a fucking troll. Just ask, like, you know what the guy's asking. He asked her somewhat about like, if you could go back in time, would you fight again? When he was really trying to ask, would you go back and fight because you never said that you retired from fighting? Or would you ever step back in the octagon because you never said that you retired from judo, but you've never been back to judo? And then you're saying the same thing about fighting, but would you go back and fight? But instead he's like, would you go back in time? And so she was like, would I go back in time? No, I don't have the power to go back in time, so no, I wouldn't go back in time. And it's like, all right, we get it. Like you're being sassy and being a troll. All right, cool. He didn't phrase it right. His bad. He's just trying to ask the toughest question out there, and that is, would you go and fight again? Hey, would you mind taking another L? Could you handle another L? Or are you just happy to pretend to take W's for the rest of your career in WWE? Because they may be W's, but they fake W's. Oh, they fake. Remember, guys, WWE's, that's a show. That's scripted. Oh, but it's hard. No, I get it. Like, definitely takes athleticism and it takes dedication to do something and do it night after night after night. But like, you know the outcome. If she doesn't like the outcome, she can be like, no, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But I think she likes the outcome. But enough on that. Maybe we'll get it one day. I don't know. I don't think so. Um, so the last thing, my take on interim titles. Right, I talked a lot about them because we broke down the Robert Whitaker fight, and we broke down the Yoel Romero versus Luke Rockhold fight. That was supposed to be a title fight, but then was going to be an interim fight. But I never really discussed how I felt about interim titles. I always talked about just that they're a thing and they're around. Maybe I rolled my eyes at them. Maybe in the earlier episodes I scoffed at it, but couldn't see that because I didn't have video. But now you can, and I'm going to roll my eyes at them. All right, so the very first one, not the very first one, but one recently is Woodley's interim welterweight championship is going up for grabs um, between RDA and Colby Covington. The lightweight one makes sense. Connor hasn't defended his belt in 500 days. That's a record. So that one makes sense. I'm not going to go into why that should be an interim belt. This one doesn't really make sense. Woodley's defended his belt enough times where he injured his shoulder in his last fight, and he's been out and he's been relaxing and enjoying himself as the champion. He's defended. He's taken the belt. He took the belt from Robbie Lawler. He defended it against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson twice, and then he defended against Damian Maia. So he's defended the belt 3 times in a year, and then he also won it. It's not a lot within a year. So now, out of nowhere, just to get more views, I'm assuming, they're developing an interim belt between Colby Covington versus RDA. Both those guys are lucky to be fighting for the title, more or less fighting for an interim belt. If this isn't a main event, which it's not, because it's on the Rio card. Sorry about that. Left my mind. On the Rio card, which already has a main event. It's already got a title shot or a title fight. But if co-main event now means interim belt or interim belt on the line or smaller weight class title fight on the line, it doesn't have to be that. I don't know if the company doesn't realize that, but just because it's the co-main event doesn't mean it has to be an interim fight. The number one contender spot is just as it's literally just as prestigious as being an interim title. But if it's the question about, oh, the paycheck's better, well, okay, then the paycheck's better, but why not just pay the fighters then? Why does it have to revolve around a fake gold belt? Just pay them like the co-main event spot then, or give them part of the pay-per-view, or part of, hey, UFC, ticket sales. You don't do that, do you? Ticket sales. Give them part of the ticket sales then. Doesn't matter. But interim belts aren't, and they shouldn't be a use for like money, right? It shouldn't be. That's your finance. That's the way to get your financial backing. Should be, oh, if I get this interim belt, now I get champion. Now I get a champion salary. Or you could just pay them better, and then they don't have to worry about, you know, like there should be like a co-main event spot. If you co-main event, you should get paid a certain amount of money, right? And then if you main event, regardless if it's for the championship or for anything, you pay a certain amount of money, depending on how well it does, obviously, if it's pay-per-view. And then ticket sales. Pay them part of the ticket sales. I mean, there's no reason why we have to come up with incentives for these guys to fight and get paid more. If you guys are looking for excuses to pay them more, here's an excuse. They work for you. Pay them more. If you have the money to pay them more, pay them more. Right? We're not giving touchdown bonuses to football players. We're not giving dunk bonuses to basketball players. We're not giving, I mean, LeBron James wins MVP of the year, right? Going back to LeBron. I think they may get a little bit of cash from it, but it's not like their whole year's salary is all like dependent on whether or not they win knockout of the year, submission of the year, dunk of the year, home run of the year, or of the night. Right? They just get a salary, they play their game, and then they move on to the next game. If they get dunk of the year or whatever, yeah, it helps them sponsorships maybe. It gets them like a little bit extra cash, but it's more just like a trophy. It's like a good job. Let's award them for something. It's an accomplishment. It's an acknowledgement that you're doing better than most people. But it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. It doesn't have to be a financial thing. It doesn't have to be your whole year or 2 years of bills and everything have to rely on that. Guys shouldn't be begging you after beating the shit out of someone Hey Dana, I bought a new house. Help me out, right? It shouldn't be that. Like what? Like you're fighting in the number one combat promotion in the world, but yet you're stressing about the cash. Why the fuck would I want to be a UFC fighter? Why the fuck would I want to go in there if your guys are stressing for cash on the mic after they win, after they're champ, or after they're vet and they've won? These guys are still begging for cash. Right? Bellator doesn't do that. Just saying. So a couple shout outs once again to the guys at the UFC gym, Jose, Billy, a couple others. All the guys there, Kendall, Gio, David, Ariel, um, David again, a couple other guys. And then shout out to Charlotte Jiu Jitsu Academy run by John Piper and the guys there. Um, Doing a lot of good work. A lot of good work. Just training every day, figuring it out. Um, we're going to try to get Billy and Jose on the podcast, as you can see. Got a nice couch. It's my interview couch. I'm going to do interviews with them. They're local MMA fighters. Jose is going to make his pro debut in May, and Billy sometime soon, hopefully. Both guys very good, very skilled, um, unorthodox fighters. Great, a different, not what you'd expect if you came to Charlotte, North Carolina to train, right? So that's the biggest thing about North Carolina and the Southern MMA scene is a lot of these guys that you train with, you come down here, and since there's not a big spotlight here, and I'd love to get a bigger spotlight here, you wouldn't you wouldn't expect a lot of these guys to be training at and knowing a lot of what or throwing some of the same stuff or doing some of the same stuff that a lot of these guys in California or more well renowned more well renowned areas of MMA technique and skill. When you get here, man, you train with some of these guys, and some of these guys spar with our motherfuckers. I mean, obviously, some of them aren't, and it's like everywhere. There's some people that pick it up better than others, but large there's a surprisingly large number of talent here in the South, North Carolina, especially, um, that I know of. These guys, I mean, I'd put them against anyone in the West or California up north, Florida, or one of these bigger places because fighting's fighting. A lot of these guys get it. A lot of these guys are very creative and they figure things out. Very good, very very good. And if anything, fucking know how to scrap. They do know how to scrap. So before I end, before I end today's podcast, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a teaser. This weekend on Sunday, I'll be giving you guys a full breakdown, kind of like I said in the beginning of the podcast, of Joanna and Rose, just like I did with Tony and Khabib. These are the biggest fights, and everyone's questioning me about the Rose fight and then the Tony fight. I think more questioning me about the Rose and the Joanna fight in due to like the Tony and Khabib, since that fight is so hyped and so close. Everyone, they just want to. I guess the Joanna and Rose fight gets caught up in it. Every fight on this card is so 50-50. Maybe, not really. I don't think it's bad. I think it's just really good fights. So, I'm going to start this off with like one of the best quotes that I heard / I kind of been saying. I feel bad for the girl that Joanna gets matched up with next. And now announced for the UFC 223 card, Rose versus Joanna for the rematch. Oh shit, never mind. I don't feel as bad anymore because Rose, I think, and I'll get into this on the podcast or on the next one. It's about experience, technique versus power, agility, youth, and not so much the experience, but the unorthodox, like the unorthodoxness. Um, the youth is pretty much it's in the same realm. Got a girl with a lot of fighting experience and a lot of her footwork, her technique, her ability to just go 5 rounds, her pace, everything. versus a girl who just is smaller than Joanna, but can still hits like fucking 125 or hits like a 135 or even. And then her youth on top of that, her expert coaching. A lot of people they don't realize Pat Barry being in her corner is a big help. People that she has in her corner and the people that she trains with, big help. Um, so very big question of this whole fight, and I'm gonna leave you guys with this thought, and it's what is the name of this fight? Does Rose have Joanna's number, or was it a fluke? I want you guys to think about that for the rest of the week. Really, if you have the chance, look at highlights from the fight. Look at the way these two girls fight. Do some of the research before and really understand what we're talking about before Sunday. So that way, when I come in on Sunday and I really break it down to you guys, you can understand why I'm picking this. A lot of people think that Joanna's mentally broken. A lot of people think it's a fluke, or was a fluke. Tune in on Sunday, and I guarantee you, um, you'll have a better understanding. And if not, you don't have to agree with me, but you can at least understand the mental side of it, and you'll be able to understand uh, the physical traits that these girls bring in. And some of the X factors, right? That's what I look for in every fight and every champion is this X factor. When people tell me that this person can be a champion, I look at them and I try to break down. Maybe they can beat the champion. Maybe they can hold that belt. But how long can they hold the belt for? Because certain fighters have an X factor. I don't know what I put it to be. An X factor. John Jones' X factor. Right? Yeah, some would say his reach or whatever. No, it's his athletic ability. Are you kidding me? He's got two brothers that play in the NFL at high level, and one was a Super Bowl winner, and the other one was a first-round draft pick and also Super Bowl winner. No, it's not. Some people are gifted, and some people are given a God's gift, and some people have to work hard. They get to that level, but when you get a guy that has all that talent and then works hard on top of that, sorry, some of us are. It's the luck of the draw. I mean, that's life. So, go about your day, do your work, but when you get that free time and you want to decompress and think about fighting, think about this statement. Does Rose have her number, or was it a fluke? Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. This has been another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. Once again, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Southern Scrap Nation and SouthernScrapNation.com, and then iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, as long as YouTube. Subscribe, review, and enjoy. Thanks, guys.